The severe February weather was not pleasant. Something unimaginable was going on outside. A whirlwind was lifting snowflakes right off the ground and swirling them upward at an incredible speed. You could not see a sign, and the frost was -15 with wind, just a natural cataclysm. The young surgeon Michael barely warmed up the car and made his way home through the windstorms. He was very tired, for the day 3 complex operations, and dreamed of only one thing, to plush on the couch and rest. But barely he entered the house, shaking off the mountain of snow, as his favorite daughter Lara threw herself on his neck. She hugged him and rejoiced. "Hurrah! Daddy is here. Did you bring me something from the bunny?" "Of course, my daughter. I love you so much." "Daddy, have you seen the weather? It's blizzarding outside. I didn't even go for a walk today. She said I'd be snowed in." The man thanked his old neighbor, who never refused to sit with Lara. "Thank you, Aunt Louise, you helped me out, as always. I would give my daughter in the garden, and she would be more fun. But with my crazy irregular schedule, I'm afraid I cannot pick her up on time, and I can't drive to my mom on the other side of town either. But I understand you're already hard. Age, you need to find a good nanny. Here, take buns and bread, as you like, and more fresh food, from the bottom of my heart." The old woman groaned and smiled. "Oh, thank you. You help me. You bring me gifts and I don't have to go to the store. Lara is a good girl, smart, but very fast. I can't keep up with her. And she is bored. She lacks socialization with children. But it's okay. If you need more, ask for more. I'll keep an eye on her. Well, I'm off. I'm off to bed. Good night, doll." The owner saw their neighbor off, had dinner and lay down on the sofa. Today's weather made Michael sad, and he decided to read Pushkin to his daughter. The storm covers the sky with darkness, swirls of snow. Then like a beast it howls, then cries like a child. That on the roof of the dilapidated suddenly thatch rustles. That is a late traveler to our window knocks. The girl listened with interest. She liked it very much when her father read aloud to her. And suddenly someone knocked on the window. Lara even shuddered, and the surprised Michael threw on his coat and went to open it, thinking that it was Grandma Louise who had forgotten something. But when he opened the wicket with great difficulty, he aghast. There stood some woman, more like a huge snowdrift, and whispered, "Help me, please," and began to fall straight into the snow. Michael did not hesitate to drag her into the house, and sat down near the fireplace where the blazing logs were crackling loudly. Lara looked frightened at the stranger. She gradually warmed up and came to her senses. The owner waved a towel at her and rubbed her cheeks. At last, the poor woman mumbled, "Help me, please. My name is Lizzie, and we live with our children not far away, in an old house on the outskirts. My son is sick, high fever, delirious. I went to the pharmacy for medicine. I left my children alone, but how can you get through in such a storm? I was exhausted. I felt I was freezing. I could only get to your window. I'm so sorry I'm such a pain in the ass." Michael introduced himself and began to dig through his medicine cabinet, found an antipyretic and antibiotics, but strictly said, "I'm a doctor, a surgeon. There are plenty of medicines in the house. Everything is there. But I won't let you go alone in such bad weather. I'll give you a ride. I have a car, though not new, but well passable in snowdrifts." Then he turned to Lara. "Daughter, I'll knock on Baba Luisa's door. Will you stay with her for a while? I'll go there and back. I'll fly the sick child and come back, okay?" The girl was sad, but agreed. She was used to unscheduled duty and absences of her father. Michael quickly dressed, and he and Lisi went to her house. The man was amazed at how poorly they lived. The house was shabby. The wind whistled from the old frozen windows, and the doors should have been repaired long ago. The children were fiddling with a boy of 5, touching his forehead and changing the compress. Michael said hello, took the kid's temperature and gasped. The thermometer was off the charts. He took a shot of antipyretic without delay, and then looked at the kids and the woman again and said firmly, "Lizzie, get the kids dressed. I suggest you all stay with me for the time being. Your son needs serious treatment, the house is cold, and no conditions, so you will not raise him on his feet. And I have an outbuilding in the yard. There is gas heating and all the amenities. I think you will be accommodated." The woman was taken aback. She was very embarrassed. "No, thank you, of course, but somehow uncomfortable. And I have nothing to pay the rent with. After the death of my husband, I am completely broke. We survive only on the allowance and with small children are not taken anywhere special. Why don't you just leave us the medication and I'll fly Alex myself? Michael frowned and answered, I'm a doctor, and I can tell you for sure. The child needs care and more than 1 week of competent therapy. In such conditions you can get complications. There is no need to be shy. Please, time is precious. Let's go quickly. The woman was frightened for her son's life and began to hurriedly dress the children. They huddled around her, not fully understanding where they were going and what would happen next. She explained to the children, Little ones, pack your things and toys. Rose, Wendy, don't forget your school books and backpacks. We'll stay at the doctor's for a while, and when Alex gets better, we'll come home. I promise. Your brother is very sick, and you all have to listen and help him. Back at the surgeon's office, Lizzie introduced everyone. The boys' names are Alex and Ethan. They are 3 and 7 years old, and the girls Wendy and Rose. They are older, 9 and 10. And what is your daughter's name? Michael nodded and answered, My daughter's name is Lara. She is 5 years old. Unfortunately, we don't go to kindergarten, so we'll be glad to have a fun company. Come in, make yourselves at home. Come on, sunshine, be hospitable, invite the kids to play. Help them get settled in. They're going to stay with us for a little while. I've got to fix their little brother. I'll take care of Alex, don't bother me. The girl understood everything, smiled, quickly talked to the kids and took them to the nursery. She began to show them her toys, coloring books. The children had something to do. The kids were engrossed and relaxed a little in the strange house. Michael listened to Alex's lungs, frowned for a long time, gave him 2 more shots and let him drink the powder. Half an hour later the fever went down and the kid sweated profusely and fell asleep. Lizzie exhaled. Thank you so much. You saved my son's life and you gave us all shelter. We didn't always live like this. I was married. Wendy and Rose were his children, and when we got married, I took them in and became a mom to them. His first wife had a fling and left them. And then we had sons together when we were married. John was so happy. He worked hard for his family. He put every penny he could into the house. We lived in this little house temporarily, the apartment sold, and the money all invested in the construction. My husband bought building materials, dreamed of a large and cozy house, so that the children all had a place to go. Each had his own room. John's hands were golden. I did not even doubt that he would build everything in a year, but trouble came from where we did not expect. My husband worked as a foreman at the construction site, worked a shift and a half, often outside laying bricks, of course, often froze. And once he caught a very bad cold, I insisted that he went to the hospital, swore. But he wouldn't take it. He swallowed all the pills and persistently ran to work until he completely collapsed. He was taken by ambulance to the ward. It turned out to be a neglected pneumonia. Doctors fought for his life, but he burned like a candle. He died in my arms. I still cannot recover from the grief, and the children are longing for Dad. It is hard for me alone with them. From the firm where my husband worked, sent money for the funeral and a small compensation paid, and lived on them all this time. The purchase of housing is no longer a question, and the construction of the more so. So we are living in grandfather's house on the outskirts. We thought we were moving there for a year, but it turned out to be for life. To be honest, sometimes I want to howl from hopelessness. My hands are down. My friends advised me to give the girls to the orphanage, saying that they are not your relatives. It will be easier. But I don't want to think about such a thing. How will I betray them? How would I abandon them? I'm their mom. Period. It's not very cheerful. Where's Lyra's mom? Are you two divorced? Michael also, somehow unnoticed, all told the woman about his life, about how he lost his spouse, how he was not easy. They were soulmates. Both survived the death of loved ones. At the end of the conversation, Michael cheered up Lizzie. Yes, we both got it. What can I say? I understand you as much as anyone. And you're a great girl that decided not to abandon the kids. It's a sin. You're strong. And will surely cope with everything. And I'll help as much as I can. Tomorrow I have a day off. I will accommodate you comfortably, as promised, and today let's sleep. There is no strength. You lie down on the sofa, and I've made a bed for myself on the cot in the kitchen, and I've made 2 sofas for the children. It's all right, as they say. Be at home, but I ask you to look after Lara when I'm on duty, because I've already tormented the old neighbor. I'd appreciate it, and Lara will have more fun. Of course, I'm not a millionaire and I'm not promising gold mountains, but I'll have enough to live on, don't worry. Live as long as it takes. I'm not sorry." Lizzie almost cried, and all thanked this kind and responsive doctor. Such people now a day with fire cannot find. Workdays rolled on. Michael could not be happy with the new neighbors. He now quietly worked a shift, did not need to ask Aunt Valia to sit with her daughter, and the girl was under supervision all day. Lizzie turned out to be a thrifty hostess and a wonderful mother. The outhouse was always in order. She had time to look after the children and Lara, and feed everyone lunch, and Michael was now waiting for a hearty hot dinner. Her daughter was also delighted. There was someone to run with, to play hide and seek with, almost like a kindergarten at home. There were quarrels, of course, where without it, children are children. But Lizzie was able somehow to settle everything wisely and reason the guys, in good conscience, without shouting and scolding. The boys obeyed her in everything. Even the boys were not very naughty. Children were all well-mannered. The older girls coming from school themselves diligently did their homework. There was no need to push them or scold them. Rose was interested in medicine and was studying the encyclopedia. In the evenings, she and Lizzie chatted amicably. They were easy, as if they had known each other since childhood. One day Michael, putting Lara to bed, suddenly began to unbraid her pigtails and noticed in her hair a surprisingly beautiful piece of jewelry, a rose obviously made of a precious stone. He asked, surprised, "Lara, where did you get such a hairpin? I don't remember you having one." "I asked Rose to give it to me, and her mother gave it to her long ago. Isn't it wonderful? It's shimmery, it's shiny. I love it." Michael wondered if he'd seen this piece of jewelry before. There could be no mistake. He decided to ask Lizzie. She told him, "This hairpin has been with me since I was born, as long as I can remember. Probably from my parents, I don't know. I'm an orphan. I grew up in an orphanage. I don't remember how I got there either. I was very young. It's amazing, but in all my years in the orphanage, no one stole it from me. And if I lost it, it was always found by some miracle. I consider it my talisman, so I thought I'd give it to Rose. She asked for it. She already gave it to Lara." Michael was thinking out loud. "It's all very strange. I 6 months ago did an emergency surgery for a rich lady, and in her hair saw the same jewelry, exactly the same. You cannot tell the difference. But how is it possible if you do not know her and the hairpin with you from birth? There's a mystery here. It's interesting. It's just a rare thing. My dad was a jeweler. I know a little about this kind of thing. It is obviously not a trinket and not cheap Chinese, and the work is handmade." Lizzie got excited and asked, "Can't you track down that woman? Ask her where she got that hairpin. Maybe I'll find out something about my family. Maybe I'm not alone in the world. I've always wanted to find someone in my family. I'll try my best. It's not my secret, but it's been bothering me. I'm wondering how you and that rich patient got the same jewelry." The doctor wasted no time, and on the next shift he found in the register of patients all the coordinates of that lady. Her name was Stephanie, and the address was available. The surgeon waited for a day off and went on a reconnaissance. The doors of the mansion opened to him by the husband of the patient, an unpleasant type. He immediately began to be rude. "Well, whose will you be and what do you need? We don't expect guests. You're probably from the insurance agency. You're trying to get my money, so I won't give you a penny." Michael was taken aback and asked, "No, I'm not from the agency. I need Stephanie. I want to talk to her on business." The hubby got upset. "I don't get it. What business do you have with my wife, I wonder? What are you sniffing around?" The same patient came out to the noise. Of course she recognized the doctor and shouted at her husband, "Jack, shame on you. What are you doing attacking a man? This is Michael, my doctor. He operated on me, you could say. Pulled me out of the dead. Hello? Come in. What are you doing here?" Michael exhaled and did not beat around the bush and began with the main thing. "Stephanie, I just have one of those ridiculous questions. While you were in the hospital, I remembered a beautiful barrette in your hair, in the shape of a rose. Where did you get it? You see, I took in a woman, and she had the exact same piece of jewelry, so it can't be a coincidence." The woman was surprised. She didn't expect such a question and answered confused. "Strange questions you ask, to be honest. I got this hairpin from my mother as a gift. And I don't know anything else. My mom is in the hospital now. She's very sick. Would you like me to call her, if she's not completely weak? Then we'll go together to see her and talk. It's no problem. Stephanie talked to her mom for a few minutes and said, "She's waiting for us, stranger still." At the mention of the hairpin, she became so animated. Even her voice changed somehow, trembling. "Now you've intrigued me too. Let's go right now, I can't wait." In half an hour they were sitting at the headboard of the bed of an elderly gaunt woman. She was breathing heavily and listening intensely to all the details. Michael decided to tell her everything as it was, how he had sheltered a large family. Large tears rolled down Pam's cheeks. She was silent for a long time, and then began to tell a long and very painful story of her life. "God, I cannot believe it. Yes, you are right. There are only 2 such brooches. They are handmade, they are made to order, and they cannot be on sale. It's pure gold and agate. Daughter, what I'm going to tell you now will be a shock to you. I kept this secret for many years, and I thought I would take it to my grave. You had a twin sister. You were born 2 minutes apart. You looked like 2 peas in a pod, and I used to confuse you. How much your father and I loved you, but one day our happiness was cut short in an instant, and misfortune divided our lives into before and after. You just turned 1 year old recently. My husband and I had to go on a business trip for a couple of days. We decided to take you to a relative's house in the country. My husband was on his way there, but on the way he had a terrible accident. He died on the spot. They found you, Stephanie, but Hélène disappeared without a trace. It's like she vanished. We searched the woods many times, volunteers, but to no avail. So I was a poor widow. At least you survived. Otherwise I'd have gone mad with grief. I never dared to tell you about it. I'm sorry, it's still an open wound for me. I blamed myself 1,000,000 times for letting my husband go alone that day. I was worried about business, but I should have been thinking about my family. Many times I thought about whether my daughter is alive or not. I don't even know how to put a candle in church, for health or for the repose of her soul." Stephanie was shocked. She whispered, "Mommy, you poor thing. How did you carry all this around for so many years? I can imagine the guilt you've been feeling. I might have a sister somewhere. Is this the same woman with many children that you took in?" Michael shook his head negatively. "It's even more confusing now. I don't understand anything at all. You and Lizzie have the same brooches, but she's not your twin sister. There's no resemblance. And Lizzie is an orphan. She was raised in an orphanage. I'm afraid I can't figure this all out for sure on my own. We should probably get some private investigators involved. Maybe we can find out something about Lizzie's parents that will help us." Pam brightened up. "Ah, that's a good idea. How could I not have thought of it myself after all these years? The police closed the case and put it in a long box. And the detectives will definitely dig up something. I've seen on TV. They solve such complicated cases. Stephanie, do it please. Maybe I have a little time left to live on this earth, and maybe God will have mercy, and at least before I die, I will know something about my blood. Consider it my last will and testament. Spare no expense. Hire the best detective you can find. And to you, Michael, thank you so much for looking for me. There are very few people like you these days." The more Michael immersed in this confusing story of Lizzie, the more he wanted to get to the truth and help loved ones to reunite, or at least something to learn about blood relatives. So he and Stephanie hired the best detectives, not stingy on payment for services, and those zealously took up the case, and in a week, there were the first results. The detectives tracked down an old nanny who had worked at the orphanage all her life and talked to her. The woman remembered only one detail, that Lizzie at the age of 1 year was thrown to the orphanage in a wicker basket, obviously handmade. People in villages often weave such baskets for household needs. And the hairpin in her hair was remembered because it was very expensive and unusual, and the child was dressed very poorly. We must give credit to the staff of the orphanage because they did not appropriate a beautiful piece of jewelry, but kept it and gave it to the girl when she grew up, as a memory of her parents. But there was no note in the basket, so nothing was known about her family. Michael listened to everything, and it suddenly struck him. Listen, Pam's husband had been in an accident on the way to the village, and Lizzie's basket could be from there. Is there a connection? Even though we don't understand it yet. I feel we're close to a clue, somewhere near and dear. Detective Fred, nicknamed Kolobok, scratched the back of his head and said, "Well, then I have only one suggestion. We just need to methodically drive around the nearby settlements and ask the old-timers, maybe someone who remembers or has heard. Stephanie's photo will show a child, and adult, because her sister should be similar to her, twins all the same. It is certainly not a quick and troublesome matter, but in our practice there were cases when it was a survey of residents brought a good result. That was the deal. While Michael was on shift, the detectives worked, and on his day off, he and Stephanie also decided to join the search. Especially since there was only one almost abandoned village left, Kamyshovka. It was not so close to the highway. On the contrary, it was a long walk through the forest, so they set off. The houses here were not rich, simple, a lot of derelicts. It was obvious that there were few people in the village, even on the street. At last, Michael noticed an old woman. She was shoveling snow near the gate, bent over in a three-legged position. They started asking her questions. "Good afternoon. We're from the detective agency. We're looking for this woman. Look at the photo, please." But the blind grandmother did not have time to look at the photo. And when she saw Stephanie, she suddenly babbled, "Anne, is that you? Why are you walking around the village with strange men? And when did you change your hair and clothes? What's your father going to say?" Stephanie didn't understand and blinked a lot, and Michael almost shouted, "Do you know a woman who looks like her? Where is she from? Where does she live? Don't be silent. Tell me, please." The old woman crossed herself and answered, "I don't know if I'm going crazy in my old age. You look just like Anne, the daughter of our forester Steve. You look just like her. They live on the edge of the village, almost in the woods. It's got a wattle and daub fence and a tiled roof, you'll see." Oh boy. So Steve's got another daughter out of wedlock? What a bug, and he's never said a word all his life. You can't find out anything. Michael turned his head. "We don't understand anything yet. Thanks to you, let's go find Anne." They found the house without difficulty. There was a thin trickle of smoke from the chimney. So the owners are there, it's already good. An old man with a thick oak beard, wearing a touloup and felt boots, came out on the threshold and shouted, "Who has come here? Who are you here to see and what do you want? No strangers come to us." Michael answered, "Open, please. We are looking for Anne, your daughter. We have good news for her." The old man opened the gate, looked at everyone, then looked at Stephanie and groaned, "Wow, how is that possible? A carbon copy of Anne, for crying out loud? Holy shit. Come on in, let's find out who you are and what's what." He led the guests into a bright and cozy upper room. The house was warm, even hot, and smelled of lavender. A woman was busy in the kitchen, humming a song. When she heard the noise, she came out to the guests. And that's when everyone gasped. It was really a copy of Stephanie, but in a rustic way. She was a beautiful young woman with a long braid almost to her waist, wearing a colorful apron and a kerchief. She wanted to say hello, but when she looked at Stephanie she made big eyes, backed away and fainted like a faint. There was a commotion. The ranger was splashing water on her. The others were just wailing, and only Michael shouted in a businesslike manner, all right, let's get out of the way, I'm a doctor, let me help." He laid the girl on the couch, loosened the collar of her shirt, and began to rub her cheeks and the tips of her ears. She immediately came to her senses and wailed, "Was I dreaming or did I just see myself? Oh mama, I'm not dreaming. Who are you? How is that possible?" Michael took the initiative again. Everyone sat down, and he thoroughly explained everything he knew about the case. It was a long monologue. The forester was silent the whole time, rubbing his beard and frowning his bushy gray eyebrows. Annie exclaimed, "So you, Stephanie, are my own sister? Well, that's it. Daddy, how did this happen? I'm the only one in the family. There are no other children. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all." The man sighed and began to tell an old story, and his worst secret, which he kept from everyone all his life. "My wife Kenzie and I have lived our whole life soul to soul. She was my first assistant in all matters. I loved her more than life. And everything would have been fine, but God did not give us children. We suffered a lot, especially my dove. I hoped, knitted beautiful hats, baby socks, gave them to everyone I knew, and saved them for myself too. Wove the yarn myself, believing that God would have mercy and send us a child. But the years went by, and the miracle never happened. And then one day, as usual, I was doing my rounds in the woods. I came to the highway, and my dog barked and ran into the bushes. He started howling. I went there. I thought maybe some animal had fallen into a trap. All sorts of things happen. But no, there was a little child lying there without feelings, just a baby A year old, no more. A girl, all in abrasions, bruises, clothes torn, mosquitoes almost bite her to death, and not a soul around. I had no time to think about it. I wrapped the child in the hem of my caftan and ran home. Kenzie saw me. She screamed, wailed, and rushed to save the child. She brought her back to her senses, bathed her, applied healing ointment to her wounds, and gave her herbal concoctions. So, little by little, the baby came to her senses. I was shouting that it is necessary to go to the district police officer in the neighboring village, to tell everything, maybe looking for someone lost. And my dove started crying, threw herself at my feet, begged me, "Steve, please, please don't go anywhere. It's heaven itself gave us a daughter, do you realize it or not? I'm gonna love her, I'm gonna raise her, we're gonna name her Anne. I've been dreaming about it for so many years, I've cried my eyes out. It's a shame they call me an empty woman, and now I'm going to be a mommy. We've got a cow, plenty of milk, we'll feed the baby." Anyway, it was like Kenzie was obsessed with the idea, and she convinced me to agree to this scam. I was willing to do anything for my beloved wife, and I didn't want to give up the baby myself. I reasoned, she spent hours in the woods, and no one came for her, so no one is looking for her. There are people, grief-stricken moms, drunkards, to whom the child is a burden. Well, I quietly made the documents in the village council, told everyone that my wife gave birth at home, she didn't go anywhere, she was sick for a long time. So they delayed it. But we really didn't communicate much with anyone. Our house, you see, is in the middle of nowhere. And my wife was full, you can't tell if she had a belly or not. Neighbors at first, of course, surprised, all asked, "Where did we get a baby?" And I honestly answered, "I found it in the forest, on the road." Everyone laughed and encouraged that, say, secretive me and my wife to the horror, managed to hide everything, and no one knew about the pregnancy. And then everything was forgotten, and life went on as usual. Anne somehow grew up imperceptibly, blossomed, to our delight, studied well at school. I took her every morning to the neighboring village to school in a brick and back. Now she works as a cook in the collective farm canteen, and we bake hot bread at home and sell it cheaply. That's how we live. I wish I could marry my beautiful girl. But there's no one to marry here, and there are only 2 or 4 people. It's a pity Kenzie didn't live to see us. She's been gone for 3 years. Her heart gave out. She died. That's it. Don't be angry with me, my daughter, that I never told you any of this. But I thought, if my daughter was missing, I would have turned the earth upside down to find my little Blood. And since no one's ever looked for you, it's not worth the trouble. You are the dearest to me. You were and you will be, so you know. Anne sobbed. Stephanie sobbed too. The sisters embraced for the first time in years, and both felt so warm, so good. Then Anne came to her father, snuggled up to him like a little girl. "Daddy, I'm not angry at all. On the contrary, I'm proud of your action, because you and Mom saved me from the beasts and starvation, and always loved me so sincerely, only taught me good things. I have nothing to resent you for. But I am very glad that I found my sister. It is so great that there is a dear person on earth, and now I am not alone in the world. We can talk, we can be friends, right?" Stephanie was sobbing too. She still couldn't believe everything that was happening, and she was babbling. "Anne, sis, our mom is very sick. She gave me one last order to look for you. She wants to see you before she dies. Don't say no, I beg you. I don't know how much time she has left, but the doctors don't give her much chance, so let her be at peace. Will you come with us? I'll introduce you to my husband." Anne looked questioningly at her father, as if looking for approval in his eyes. He nodded his head. "Go, my daughter. To see your mother is a holy thing. I'm not offended. But don't forget about me. Come back soon. I haven't lived a day without you. I'll probably miss you." Michael watched all this, listened, rejoiced that close people found each other, and then suddenly exclaimed, "This is all wonderful, of course, but it is still not clear how the second of the hairpins turned out to be at Lizzie. Can anyone explain it to me? After all, she had nothing to do with the whole thing." Steve shrugged. "What I don't know, I don't know. When I found my daughter in the woods, she wasn't wearing any jewelry. Her hair was long, tangled, and disheveled. So we have to think. We have to think." All together returned to the city. Anne looked at the shining windows, skyscrapers, shopping centers, and marveled. After all, she had never been outside the village. If something needed to be bought, her father sometimes went to the city himself and brought a lot of things at once or in the village store, and Michael secretly observed, laughed kindly, and admired Anne to what she was naive, trusting, sincere, holy simplicity. But at the same time she was so disposable, he was drawn to her, even though they knew each other only one day. He suddenly, without expecting himself, suggested, "Anne, when you visit your mother and sister, can I invite you to my house? I'll introduce you to my daughter. Her name is Lara, with Lisa and her children. We really always noisy now, but fun. We'll be glad to have you. Will you come?" The woman glowed, blushed, and babbled, "Thank you. Why not stay? I love children very much. I will definitely visit you." Stephanie introduced her sister to her husband. He was surprised, splashing his hands. Even did not believe that it happens in life. But Anne didn't like him very much. He looked at her with a greasy look, as if he was evaluating her, and kept winking at her until Stephanie saw him. It was so unpleasant that the woman decided, just in case, not to linger in that house. She only spent the night at her sister's house. They talked all night. They didn't want to sleep. They had something to tell each other, because they had lived half their lives apart. Stephanie insisted, "Anne, move to the city now. What are you going to do in the middle of nowhere? There are such opportunities and prospects here. I'll get you a job in a restaurant. Since you like to cook, you'll earn good money. We'll find you a fiancé in the city, rich. You're a beauty, and you'll live happily ever after." But the woman kept refusing and hesitating. "Thank you, sister. I'll think about it. For now, I still will not leave my father. He is already at an age, sicknesses overwhelm. And how will the villagers be without me? I already deliver hot bread to their homes at 6 in the morning. But thanks for the offer. If I think of it, I'll come straight to you." And the next day the sisters went to see their mother. What a meeting. When they entered, Pam was lying half asleep, under the IV, her haggard, exhausted by a long illness. Her face expressed complete doom. But as soon as she saw the two daughters leaning over her, she immediately came to her senses. Awake, her eyes shining, the woman whispered, "My girls, my daughter Mary. How I longed to see you. How I longed for you all these years. What a beauty you've grown." "Stephanie, thank you. I found my sister." The doctor was right. "Oh, I'm so happy." Anne was embarrassed. Tears came to her eyes. "My name is Anne. It just happened. I'm glad we met too, Mommy. It's so strange when you've been calling another woman Mommy all your life, and now it turns out that I have a different Mommy. I still can't believe it all, but I am very grateful to my parents. They raised me as a native, and sincerely loved me. I always felt it. What are you sick? I'm so sorry for you. Is there anything I can do to help?" Pam bickered again. She was having another attack. Stephanie grabbed the mask and handed it to her mother. She began to breathe into it, coughing. When she recovered a little, she replied sadly, "Thank you, my daughter, for your concern. But no one can help me. I have a severe form of asthma. Attacks more and more often. I'm suffocating. I can't do it without a mask. Doctors are throwing up their hands. How much money we've spent on treatment, I can't count. Nothing helps. This disease will choke me someday." Anne thought for a moment, then said quietly, "I will consult with my father. My mother was a herbalist. All her life treated villagers, made her own ointments and tinctures. Dad knows a lot of things too. There have been cases when a bishop would bring a sick person to be buried, and my mother would take him and bring him to his feet. Anyway, it's worth a try." Pam grinned bitterly. "I'd be glad of any help. I have nothing to lose anyway." Anne got through to the village council the same day, and they tracked down the forester and brought him to the phony. She talked to him for a long time about something, asking questions, reading out the diagnoses. Then she came back to the hospital and said to Pam, "Mommy, I talked to Daddy. He says you should go to the village. The air there is special, therapeutic. He'll try to cure you. Well, will you go?" Stephanie waved her hands. "Are you all crazy? What village? Mom won't last an hour without a mask. And if she gets worse there? Then what? No, I'm absolutely against it." Anne sighed, but she didn't argue. Decided to stop by the state tie to see Michael, and then she started to go home. She was uncomfortable in the big city, as if she were not herself. Michael was very happy, and the whole family came out to meet the guest. The children clamored. Each tried to say something different. Anne laughed. In this house she immediately became somehow calm and cozy. It was possible to be herself and relax. They had a delicious dinner. Then they talked, played, drew. Anne immediately got along with the kids and was happy to play with them. And Michael was mesmerized. This twin sister had fallen deep into his soul. He could not look at her. She was special, as if from another planet. Her natural beauty beckoned more than any cosmetics and perfume. Looking at Anne could accurately describe her, just Russian beauty. Such with him after the death of his wife has never happened. He wanted to press her to himself, to hug her tightly, to protect her from all the troubles and misfortunes at once and not to let her go anywhere. When the children had gone to bed, she and Michael and Lizzie chatted about life in the kitchen. Anne said that Dad had told Pam's mother to go to the country, but she wouldn't go. Michael thought about it and answered, "And I will support him. With asthma, a change of climate and even just clean forest air can help a lot. I will try to persuade her, as a doctor. We must try at least. You can always come back." Lizzie added sadly, "Well, everyone is happy. You and your sister found. Your mom saw your daughter. And I was an orphan. And remained. Who brought me to the orphanage in a basket? Where are my parents? Maybe I have brothers or sisters too? And I don't know anything about it. I'm so bitter about it." Michael took Lizzie's hand and tried to cheer her up in a friendly way. "Don't be discouraged. Despondency is a terrible sin. I have some more ideas. We will not give up and continue to search for your family. We have to believe." Lizzie immediately smiled. "You're so wonderful, Michael. I've never met anyone like you. You took me in, an orphan with 4 children, helped Anne and Stephanie to meet, unraveled such a complicated story. Thank you so much for your good deeds." Michael winked at the women. "And you know, I've known you all for a while, but it feels like we've known each other for ages. Lara, thanks to your kids, so changed. She became cheerful, sociable. Rose with her engaged in it. The boys protect her. So thank you." Michael talked to Pam for a long time, like a doctor, and finally talked her into the trip, and they decided to take the mask with them, just to be on the safe side. He took a week's vacation and went with her, took his daughter with him, and left Lizzie and the kids in charge. He wanted to check Pam's condition personally, since he had vouched for her to Stephanie. The forester was already waiting for everyone, heated the stove, arranged a bath with brooms, and brewed herbal tea in a samovar. He personally steamed all the guests, and Lara fell asleep on the bed by the stove. The next day he took Pam for a walk in the woods. The woman was still very weak and walked with great difficulty. And he said to her in a low, crackling voice, "Now don't think about your illness. Look around and breathe deeply. Look at the silence, only the snow creaking under your feet. What mighty spruces we have, and what paws. They're a sight to behold. There, look, a Rusak hare rushed by, oh how fast. And the sky is so vast and blue it dazzles the eye. You, city people, all running somewhere, all rushing on the frantic tarantika of life, all nervous. You should stop. Take a break. Look around. After all, the body is not iron, and it sometimes breaks down, and you keep filling it with chemical pills, and they cure one thing and cripple another. And in our village all the medicines are right under our feet. Just look closely. Did you know that pine cone jam can save you from stroke? You don't believe it? Well, it can." Pam didn't notice that she had been walking with pleasure for over an hour, and she didn't need the mask, and she didn't have a stroke, and her strength came from somewhere. Miracles indeed, and the doctors didn't give her a chance. Michael, Anne, and Lara made a huge snow globe. Then everyone took pictures with it. Then Michael took the girls sledding. They all piled up in the snow and laughed. And it was so good for the 3 of them, as if they were a real family. But the man also did not forget about the case and decided to visit the local district officer. He could safely be called an old-timer. All his life on his site worked, knows everyone. He told the whole confusing story, from beginning to end, and then asked, "What do you think? Who among the locals could have thrown a 1-year-old girl in a wicker basket to the orphanage? It's definitely from your villages. Everything revolves around them. There must be a solution to the hairpin story." He was thinking for a long time, remembering, going through the files, thinking, and then suddenly he remembered. I have only one version. In a neighboring village, a family lived alone. A mother, a father, and a daughter. Nothing special. But I just remember that their daughter Sarah married badly. All her mother-in-law was nagging her that she had a child. She just had a girl. And her husband, too, took her and threw her out. She went home, and there her father attacked her with fists, saying, "Go back to your husband, you're disgracing us." So the poor girl left the village with a girl and no one ever saw her again. I don't know if this will help you or not, but I don't remember any other similar stories. Michael asked, "What was Sarah's last name?" "You don't remember?" "What was her daughter's name?" The policeman replied, "Sarah, I remember exactly, but I don't know about the child. It was a long time ago, I forgot." Mikhail's insides shook and his legs gave out. His mother had the same last name before she got married. Coincidence. She'd never told him anything about her family, and Mikhail had no grandparents on her side. And in general, Mom was always secretive, hid documents from everyone. He hurriedly said goodbye to the district officer and returned to the forest ranger's house. There the work was in full swing. Anne was kneading dough in a large bowl, and where only the strength came from so skillfully did everything. And Lara and Pam molded dumplings. The daughter was smeared with flour, but so happy. And Anne's mom was no longer dying. Michael asked her, "Pam, I see you're feeling better, and the mask is lying idle." The woman nodded her head. "I really didn't believe it. You saw me. I was choking all the time, and now I can breathe so easily, it's beautiful. I didn't realize how good it is to live in the countryside. I always thought that this is the lot of the poor and losers. I tried to raise my late husband's business, chasing success, and my health was getting worse and worse. And then it came to asthma. Thanks to my daughter and Steve, they got me out of that hospital, made me look at life in a whole new way. I'm going to move to the country, close to my daughter, in my old age." Anne was delighted, and Steve grunted into his mustache. "You're welcome. My daughter and I would be happy to. We'd be happier if you moved away for good. So, well, let's make dumplings and have dinner. It's been a long time since my daughter and I have had so many guests. It's so nice to be here." Mikhail left Lara in the village to stay, and he went to the city on business. He urgently needed to talk to his mother and find out everything. This mystery of the hairpin did not give him peace, but still somehow did not believe that it was not a coincidence. Maybe they were namesakes. Mom was very happy about her son's visit, because he was so busy he didn't often visit her. She fussed, hugged him, began to set the table and put the kettle on the stove. They first talked about life, about his mother's health, and Michael was still gathering his courage to start a difficult conversation. But the woman already saw that the son is on edge. She herself asked, "Michael, you something from the doorstep himself? Not himself? What happened to you? Something with Lara? Why did you come without her? Don't feel sorry for me. Tell me the truth." Michael exhaled and began, "Don't worry, Mom. My daughter is fine. She's visiting my friends right now. I'm going to tell you a story about a woman named Lizzie, an orphan from the orphanage, and you listen carefully. And I really hope I hear the truth from you too, whatever it may be." He told everything from beginning to end, Mom fidgeting in her chair, pale, her hands shaking. It was obvious that she was involved in the story. The old woman silently went to the locker, drew some Corvalol, and drank it in one gulp. She remained silent for a while, and then quietly began to tell, "Yes, God works in mysterious ways. I so carefully kept this secret, so that no one and never learned about my terrible sin of youth, and it should happen that it was you, son, and revealed it. I guess this is my payback for everything. Before I met your father, I was really married, living in the country, but only marriage was not fun. My husband beat me like a goat, jealous without fail, and mother-in-law nagged day and night. Soon I became pregnant, I thought. The new relatives will take pity, and my torments will stop. But where is there? After the birth of my daughter became even worse. My mother-in-law kept saying like a clockwork that my granddaughter does not resemble any of them, and I definitely fattened her, Nasukirovat my husband, and he, as a drink, raging and with a stick in the vegetable garden, chased me. And when my daughter was a year old, they threw me out of the house and found another bride for their son. Where was I supposed to go? Home to my parents, of course. I hoped they'd understand me, take pity on me. But my father yelled so much he told me to go back to my husband to apologize. He said that a man teaches a woman. It's a common thing in the village, so bear with it. I was on the verge of madness. I didn't know what to do, but I decided not to return to my tyrant husband. I put my daughter in a wicker basket and went wherever I was going. I got on a bus and left for the city, scraped up money for the road, and cried all the way. My daughter was crying in the basket too. She wanted to eat. I had absolutely nowhere to go and nothing to feed the child. I would not have pulled her out. So I broke down, dropped my daughter off at the shelter gate at night, and ran away. My heart was torn to pieces. I wandered around for a while, spent the night at the train station. There I met a woman. I didn't tell her anything about the child. She took me in and got me a job as a conductor on a city bus. And then I met your dad on the bus. He was on his way home from a business trip, and we started dating and fell in love. We started living in his apartment, got married. Then you were born. Borya was so happy that he had a son. He loved you to his last breath, you know. Michael was shocked. He almost shouted, "What about my daughter? What about your daughter and my sister? Why didn't you tell Daddy and take her out of the orphanage? How could you do that, Mom? She wasn't happy there. She was suffering. And we were living the good life. Isn't that fair?" He clutched his head, and he couldn't comprehend it all. And his mother suddenly cried quietly, wiped her tears with a handkerchief, and whispered, "You're right, son. I'm a cuckoo. A real cuckoo. I abandoned my child, and there's no forgiveness for me. But I was afraid, do you understand or not? With your dad, I just learned what a normal family is, a loving husband. How would I tell him about my daughter? That I'd done such a nasty thing? He wouldn't forgive me and he'd leave me. And then what? Am I going to wander around again? Even if I'm not a good mother to my daughter, you have nothing to reproach me for? I love you with all my heart and soul. You think I haven't felt guilty all these years? Yes, you have. I feel better now that I've told you all this. I'd really like to see my girl and apologize to her. I found that hairpin on the road, and I left it as a souvenir for my daughter. Who would have thought that it would help to unravel everything and bring my daughter back to my doorstep?" Michael could not come to himself. He was angry at his mother, and ran out of her house like a scalded man. He couldn't wait to tell Lizzie everything. When he got home, Lizzie was in the kitchen making dinner. The house smelled delicious and the children were busy doing whatever they could. Rose, as always, was sitting with a book. Wendy was watching cartoons, and the boys were playing on the computer. He looked around and exclaimed, "Hello, everybody. I've got great news. Lizzie, come here, and listen up. I've solved the mystery of your hairpin. It turns out you are my maternal sister, and your children, it turns out, are my nephews. That's right, kids." The children cheered and shouted, "Hooray!" The older ones understood and hugged. The little ones just clapped their hands, realizing that something good had happened. Lizzie was crying. She couldn't digest it all and asked, "So, your mom is my mom too? And she's alive? And I'll finally see her? God, you have no idea how much I've dreamed about it all these years, how much I've prayed for it, to find my mom and hug her." Michael was taken aback and asked again, "How? Don't you resent her? She left you, didn't she? Even I never knew anything about it. And neither did Dad. I'm so angry with her. She's crying now, saying she wants to see you, to repent. Where was she before? You're the only one with 4 kids, but you don't abandon them? I don't understand how she could do that. I'm ashamed of her in front of you, sister." Lizzie waved her hands and replied, No, don't talk about her like that, please don't. I'm not mad at her at all. If Mom raised you, such a wonderful person, then she's not lost at all. It was when I was a child that I resented her. But now I don't. I'm a mom myself and I know how hard life can be. She may have made a mistake. She may have stumbled. She may even have chickened out. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that I can see her, that I can hug her. Thank you, Michael. I've always dreamed of having a brother like you. And don't be mad at Mom. I don't need to be. She'll answer for her sins. We can't judge her. When can I see her? I can't wait. I'm even a little scared. I wonder what she's like. Do I look like her? Michael hugged his sister, tightly, like a brother, and said, "You know, Lizzie, it's not for nothing that I felt a favor to you at once. Something inside worked. And you could have knocked on the neighboring house. But still we were brought together by fate. So now it's for sure that I don't hear that you are inconvenienced and can't pay the rent. We're one family. You can live as long as you want. Do you understand, sister?" And he flicked her on the nose jokingly. Lizzie laughed. She was jubilant in her heart. She had been dreaming of seeing her mom for so many years, and now she had found her mom and her brother. Isn't it happiness? The meeting of mother and daughter was very emotional. Lizzie cried, hugged the old woman, stroked her slouching shoulders and wailed, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." How I dreamed of saying those words someday. Know that I'm not angry. I'm not cursing you. How happy I am that we met. You can't imagine. The old woman was also sobbing and repenting. Forgive me, my daughter. I'm not a good mother. I've been blaming myself for this sin all these years. I realize it's pointless to justify myself. I'm very guilty before you. And yet now that we've met, let's communicate. You can introduce me to the kids. Michael told me I have 4 grandchildren now. I'd love to take care of them if you'll let me. You're a better woman and a wiser mother than I am, and I'm proud to have a daughter like you. Michael began to go to the village often. He and Anne were so attracted to each other, like a magnet. Soon both realized that they fell in love. But the woman would not agree to move. She loved her native village, her home. It was nice and quiet here. She was doing what she loved and enjoyed it. Michael thought for a long time, weighed everything, consulted with his daughter, and decided everything in his own way. He left his house to his sister and children and moved to live with Lara in the village, for good. Steve welcomed him as if he were his own son-in-law. It was not so far to the city, and Michael went to work by car. But Lara also liked it here very much. Grandpa Steve had a cat, a dog, a cow, chickens and ducks, so there was someone to play with. And there was plenty of room to run around. Anne was also happy. She thanked Michael. "Love, thank you for agreeing to move. I could not even believe it. You are not used to living in the country. I thought you would not agree." Michael embraced his bride, kissed her tenderly and answered, "I love you, Anne, and for me the most important thing is to make you happy. Do you understand? I've seen how uncomfortable you are in the city, how your soul longs to go home. And I like it here, strangely enough. I'll get a bonus. We'll save some money. We'll expand the house. We'll install communications. And we'll live no worse than in the city. And my daughter likes it here. So everyone's happy. And for my sister now I am calm. We'll not worry that to live with children nowhere to live, because her house is quite dilapidated, and with 4 children there is certainly not turnaround." Anne clung tighter to his beloved. "You know, I thought so I'll die an old maid, no longer a girl long ago and all alone. Many suitors, but either I am not to my heart, or my father chased and said, 'No need such a passer-by. It's not your happiness, let him go with God.' I guess my father knew better than me that my happiness was ahead of me. You are my happiness, and our Lara." Michael winked. "But I wouldn't mind raising a boy, would I? As strong as Dad, as wise as Grandpa, and as kind as Mom. How would you like that?" Anne laughed, and Michael kissed her passionately, picked her up in his arms and carried her to the heated hot bath to steam her with brooms. Who would have thought that a beautiful piece of jewelry in a little girl's hair would help so many people to become happy at once? Miracles indeed.